Ladies and gentlemen, the opening ceremony, the guest lecture is about to start. I'm Shiva.
I'm Nashwa.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. His Excellency, Rector of Universitas Muhammadiyah, Professor Dr. Hamka, Professor Dr. Gunawan Surya Putro, Vice Rectors of UHAMKA, Ibu Anisya Kumala Mashhadi, Dr. Desvian Bandarsha, Professor Dr. Nani Solihati, and Dr. Muhammad Dwi Fajri. Our beloved speaker, Dr. Sarah Cardey, the Dean of Faculty of Social and Political Sciences UHAMKA, Ibu Dr. Randa Telis Korliana, Vice Deans of Faculty of Social and Political Sciences UHAMKA, Head of Department, the Office for Ranking Cooperation and International Affairs, distinguished guests, faculty members, and all students.
Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Praise be to Allah, the God, the most gracious, the most merciful. Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today we will have a guest lecture program on gendered phrases in development, the role of communication in achieving SDGs by Dr. Sarah Cardey. She is Associate Professor School of Agriculture, Policy and Development, University of Reading, United Kingdom.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ladies and gentlemen, before we start our agenda, we will be performing welcome dance. Please welcome Tari Ondel Ondel by student of Communication Department in a dance group Mentari. Let's give a round applause.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that because of something, we will continue to the next agenda.
Going to the next agenda, the recitation of the Holy Quran. To bless this occasion, we invite Fatima Azahra to the stage. Please welcome.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إذ قالت امرأة عمران رب إني نذرت لك ما في بطني محررا فتقبل مني إنك أنت السميع العليم. قالت رب إني وضعتها أنثى والله أعلم بما وضعت وليس الذكر كالأنثى وإني سميتها مريم وإني أعيذها بك وذريتها من الشيطان الرجيم. فتقبلها ربها بقبول حسن وأنبتها نباتا حسنا وكفلها زكريا كلما دخل عليها زكريا المحراب وجد عندها رزقا قال يا مريم أنى لك هذا قالت هو من عند الله إن الله يرزق من يشاء بغير حساب. صدق الله العظيم. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Zahra, for the reciting the Holy Quran. Now, we invite everyone to rise for singing the national anthem Indonesia Raya and Muhammadiyah Mars Sang Surya. Please stand up. Thank you, and please be seated.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we start our agenda, we will be performing welcome dance. Please welcome Tari Ondel Ondel by student of Communication Department in the dance group Mentari. Let's give a round of applause. Wow, so beautiful. Thank you to the talented students for the beautiful performance celebrating our cultural heritage. Now, we are pleased to invite the Dean of the Faculty of Social and Political Sciences, Dr. Randa Telis Corliana, to deliver welcome speech. Ibu Telis Corliana, the stage is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera buat kita semua. Yang terhormat Rektor UHAMKA, Profesor Dr. Gunawan Suryo Putro MHum. Yang kami hormati Bapak Ibu Wakil Rektor yang kebetulan pada hari ini berhalangan hadir, our respected Dr. Sarah yang pada hari ini akan menjadi guest lecture kita semua. Thank you Miss Sarah for taking the time to share your knowledge for us. Yang kami hormati Bapak Ibu dosen, Bapak Ibu dari unit kerjasama, kemudian yang saya banggakan teman-teman mahasiswa yang pada hari ini sudah bergabung di sini, ya luar biasa teman-teman. Ini di semester ini baru pertama kali pembicara kita dari luar. Thank you Miss Sarah sudah meluangkan waktunya. Ya, saya rasa tema kegiatan kita pada hari ini sangat menarik, ya, terkait dengan gendered voice in development, the role of communication in achieving SDGs. Teman-teman semua tahu bahwa permasalahan gender ini belum tuntas ya dimanapun saya rasa, dan permasalahan diskriminasi itu tidak hanya di Indonesia, tapi hampir di seluruh negara masih mengalami diskriminasi terhadap perempuan. Kemudian ada kalau nggak salah 5 permasalahan yang paling penting yang nanti mungkin bisa dikoreksi oleh Miss Sarah kalau ada yang terlewat, terkait dengan masalah kemiskinan, kemudian masalah pendidikan, masalah kesehatan, masalah kekerasan, dan masalah kesetaraan di bidang politik, ya, atau kalau teman-teman mungkin pernah mendengar bagaimana pengambil keputusan. Ya, nah ini ternyata hampir di setiap negara, di wilayah, bahkan di lokalitas kita sendiri ini permasalahan gender ini memang permasalahan yang bersifat kontekstual. Jadi kita akan menjumpai banyak permasalahan gender yang berbeda antara tempat satu dan tempat yang lainnya. Teman-teman sekalian, saya tadi sudah mengintip materi dari Miss Sarah dan saya rasa cukup menarik ya, karena permasalahan gender itu enggak hanya bicara tentang peran saja, tapi juga di sektor-sektor yang lain ya, bahkan permasalahan kerusakan lingkungan saja itu juga bisa menyebabkan masalah ketimpangan gender ya. Jadi di berbagai macam wilayah itu kebanyakan perempuan ini adalah perawat lingkungan. Jadi ketika lingkungan itu rusak, maka perempuan-perempuan ini juga akan terpinggirkan. Kemudian juga perkembangan teknologi, inovasi teknologi ini tanpa dibarengi adanya literasi dan pemberdayaan terhadap perempuan, ini juga ternyata juga akan menyebabkan marginalisasi terhadap perempuan itu sendiri. Ya, pada hari ini alhamdulillah kita kehadiran pakar gender ya, dan ini enggak main-main ya. Jadi pakar gender ini dari universitas di Inggris ya. Tentunya di sana permasalahan gendernya bisa jadi berbeda dengan di Indonesia. Bagaimana pengalaman Miss Sarah di sana terkait dengan pemberdayaan perempuan? Hari ini kita akan mendengarkan apa yang akan pengalaman yang akan beliau ceritakan kepada kita semua, dan mungkin di sini kita akan mendapatkan wawasan yang lebih baik lagi. Jadi kalau di kelas mungkin kebetulan di sini ada mata kuliah komunikasi gender Pak Rektor. Jadi ini sebagian adalah teman-teman dari kelas komunikasi gender. Nah mereka ini selama ini kita bicara gender di lingkup komunikasi. Ya, pada hari ini kita mau lihat ada masalah gender apa saja sih di lingkungan masalah lingkungan ekologi, kemudian juga masalah-masalah yang lainnya. Ya, nanti kita dengarkan pada hari ini cerita dari Miss Sarah, ya, pengalaman beliau melakukan pemberdayaan di negaranya mungkin, atau mungkin Miss Sarah juga sudah keliling ke berbagai wilayah sehingga punya pengalaman juga terkait dengan permasalahan gender di wilayah lain. Baik teman-teman, nanti saya berharap teman-teman khususnya yang dari kelas komunikasi gender bisa mengeksplor banyak di sini. Kalian bisa menanyakan di mana sih peran komunikasi di sini. Ya, karena ternyata dengan perkembangan teknologi tanpa komunikasi yang baik ya kepada perempuan ini juga akan menyebabkan perempuan termarginalkan. Mungkin tidak perlu saya berpanjang kata, saya tidak akan mengurangi waktu Misarah untuk bicara banyak di sini. Saya akhiri, selamat kita mendengarkan kuliah pada hari ini. Billahi taufiq wal hidayah, fastabiqul khairat. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Ibu Thalis Corliana, for the welcoming to all participants.
We are honored to now invite the Rector of UHAMKA, Professor Dr. Gunawan Suryoputro, to deliver the opening remarks. Professor Gunawan, the time is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah wa syukurillah la khola wa la quwata illa billah. Very good morning. Our respected guest lecturers, Dr. Sarah Cardey. Sorry if I'm mistaken in pronouncing your name. Dr. Sarah. Yang saya hormati Dean of Faculty of Ilmu Politik dan Ilmu Sosial. Teman-teman sejawat, Wakil Dekan, Kaprodi, dosen, and our dearest and beloved student. It is a great honor for me to be invited in this opportunity to have the lectures by Dr. Sarah from Reading University with the theme of Gender Voices in Development and the role of communication in achieving SDGs or Sustainability Development Goals. If referred to the 17 goals of SDGs, which has been set by the United Nations, if we refer to number 7, that is a partnership, is the main role of achieving this goal. And today, it is not too exaggerated to say that by having this discussion or seminar, we respond to that goals. As we know that communication have a vital roles. Communication has crucials for development, actings, and tool of empowerment. What is meant by empowerment is mean that communication empowers individuals and groups like us here in this forum in order to able to express our opinion, our needs, our abilities, in order to foster sense of ownership in development initiative, particularly to support the SDGs. So in this case, communication promotes participatory development. By promoting this, and we believe role of communication is one of important role. I will not talk a lot about this because it is not my fields of science. And I believe our respected guest speakers today, Dr. Sarah, would like to share her experience dealing with the role of communication. And hopefully, all my dear students will participate and active during this discussion or seminar. Therefore, let's open our seminar. Kita buka seminar ini dengan sama-sama membaca basmalah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. And welcome to our university, Dr. Sarah. I do hope that this is not your first and final visit to our university. This is the oldest building belong to us. So we have several locations, 7 campuses around Jakarta. My head office is not here, but there, far from here, it's about 10 kilometers from here, if not mistaken. Welcome to other faculties. This morning, we have a short chat with her that actually he is not only excellent speakers, but he is also an excellent actor. Because she is also good at drama, you know that. And therefore, we also invite her later on with another topic. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Professor Gunawan Suryaputro, for the inspiring messages.
Before we next to our agenda, kindly to all participants taking photos with the rectors of Hamka. Now we are moving to the main event, the guest lecture session. This session will be moderated by Ms. Farida Haryati, a respected lecturer of the Communication Department. To Ms. Farida Haryati, the floor is yours and enjoy the discussion time.
Thank you. Come, Sarah. Check. Okay, thank you, Naswa and Siva as our beautiful MCs. Give a round of applause for them. Yeah, thank you. And good morning, everyone here, Pak Rektor. She has leave this room, okay. And then the Dean, Ibu Telis Korliana, and then Vice Dean of Faculty of Social and Political Sciences, Bapak Arif Magulam and Bapak Dr. Eko Digdoyo, and then Dr. Akbar and Dr. Rati from Office of International Affairs UHAMKA, and also lecturers from UHAMKA. We have Dr. Sri Mustika, Senior Lecturer, Dr. Novi Andayani, and also Dr. Nurdin, Dr. Budi, and Ibu Yulia, and my colleagues from Universitas Satya-Negara, Dr. Rusnoto, thank you for coming here, Bapak Munir, and also my beloved students, yes, and yeah, thank you very much for coming here. And welcome to our session on gender voices in development, the role of communication in achieving SDGs. And today we explore how communication not only shapes, but also amplifies gendered experiences and identities, and how it can be a powerful tool for driving progress toward the SDGs, especially those related to gender equality. And by gendered voices, we mean how different genders can express themselves and then can be represented and then can be heard across various communication platforms and also social contexts. And throughout our discussion, we will look at how communication, whether through media, policy, dialogue, education, or community engagement, plays a pivotal role in transforming norms and then values and also promoting equitable opportunities for all. And before Sarah's presentation, maybe let me read a brief CV of Sarah. Yeah, can I read? Yeah, we could look at this screen. Sarah Cardey, she is Associate Professor of International Department, University of Reading, United Kingdom. And next, Mas, yes. And her areas of interest incorporate communication for development, gender inequalities, knowledge, communication and innovation system, and then rural communication, and also livelihood and governance of knowledge and participation. She is also both postgraduate supervisors for gender and development communication. And then she also have research centers and group. Global Development Research Division, and then she is visiting professor at University of the Philippines, Los Baños, and visiting professor at Tokyo Agricultural University, and she is also adjunct professor at Mahidol University of Thailand. So I think that without further ado, let us listen to the presentation that will surely provide us with knowledge by our beloved speaker, Dr. Sarah Cardey. Sarah, I think the time is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming this morning. Thank you to my colleagues, to the rector, to the fantastic MCs. If you want to come back to Reading with me, I'll give you a job. And your incredible student dancers. I'm going to be telling my colleagues at Reading that we had dancing here. We need to make our presentations as interesting. That was very brave and very beautiful. So thank you. Um, I'll talk today about gender and communication, and how can we use communication to help achieve gender equity, and how can communication help us to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Okay. So we've all seen the SDGs, yeah? And we know that gender equity or gender equality is number 5. But I think it's important to remember that gender equality and the consequences of inequality cut across all of the SDGs. There's none that is not affected by the results of inequality. And when I say gender inequality, I'm not just talking about women's position. I'm talking about the relationship between men and women, how men are taught what it is to be a man, and how women are taught what it is to be women, because this has consequences for men and for women. If men are told, oh, you shouldn't be crying, boys don't cry, that's teaching men that it's weak to be sad. Well, it's not. We know that. At the same time, if you teach women, you can't do that, women can't do that, that's also teaching women particular roles. Both men and women lose when there are inequalities. So I wanted to make that clear, because we often talk about gender equality and then just focus men, and we say men are the bad guys, and we need to stop the men from doing bad things, when actually what we need to do is improve women and men's relationships and how society functions. Yeah? I like to tell the story of my father. Now, my father is 75 years old. He's very short. Comes up to here, so I'm taller than both my parents, and I'm not tall. not for a Canadian. And my father and I were driving in rural Canada. I grew up in Canada, and we got into a car accident. Another car was going way too fast, and we were turning, and it hit the car. I was sitting in the front seat. My dad was driving, and the car smushed. It crumpled. Nobody was hurt. We were all perfectly safe. The car was destroyed. And we got out of the car. We were near our friend's house, so they heard the crash, and they came running to see what was happening. Now, my friend's husband, he's a kind man. So the first thing he did was bring us tea and water and a blanket. Well, my father got out of the car, and he walked a little bit away, and he turned his back. I was like, what's going on? Well, he was crying, which he was in a car accident with his daughter, and he was upset. And crying is pretty normal when your kid nearly died. But he was ashamed of himself. And it was the other man who came and gave us a cup of tea and a blanket and comforted him. And so he showed one way of soothing my father. My dad decided this man was his best friend. But it shows us what can happen if we don't think about the bigger picture of what does inequality mean in our lives. For my father, that meant afraid of being scared about his child, when that is a very natural thing. And so I want us to think about this in our lives, because sometimes it's easier to be abstract. We think about the issues and we don't think about what does this mean in everybody's life. That makes sense? Okay. When we think about gender inequality, cutting across all of the SDGs, we need to remember, what does that mean? So a lot of the Sustainable Development Goals look at environmental change. What are the consequences of climate change? Well, these are very much gendered. The effect of environmental change has a different effect on women and men. Women and men use different resources. Women may use water differently. Women use forests differently from men. So we will see that where people have greater access to resources, they are able to be more resilient to climate. When they have less access, they're less resilient. Women often use forest products like rattan or like wild foods. That's more likely to be the concern of women. So when forests aren't producing or they're shrinking, women will feel the impact of that more than men will. Similarly, if their water is drying up, women are normally in charge of water use. If we have less water, women have to do more to get enough water for a family. So we see different impacts for men and for women. We also know that poverty is gendered because men and women have different and unequal relationships to resources. So men and women will experience poverty differently. Women may have less money. Men may have more pressure to earn an income if they're expected to earn an income for the whole family. Men will experience that pressure that women don't have. But women may experience not earning an income and having to ask for money from their husband or their father or their brother. So it looks different, but it's the same inequalities that both men and women experience differently. For a long time in development and community development, people didn't recognize that women and men had different experiences. There was an idea that everybody experienced poverty the same way. So recognizing that men and women have different experiences is an innovation in and of itself. And so now we need to understand, what does that look like? What do women's experiences look like? What do men's? So that we can change it and so that we can improve lives for men and women. But there's a lot of the dimensions of poverty. It's not just having enough money, it's access to services, access to loan products. If you own a piece of land, if doesn't matter if a woman owns a piece of land, if she can't invest in the land, it's not worth a lot. Not for her. She can't do anything with it. So access to loan products, access to financial markets and private investment, there are usually very substantial differences between women and men, and women often struggle to get loans. Microfinance and a microcredit, women are usually considered by mainstream bank institutions to be a risky loan. So it makes it more difficult for them to get financial services. Similarly, there's a link between poverty and health. Biologically, women's bodies should live longer than men. That's biology. That doesn't, when we think about how we live, that has an impact on our health and the length of our lives. So the way we live, are we healthy? Do we have access to medical services? That's something that's more socially determined. Well, women often have less access to the right health care. This is at a global level. That means women are more likely to get sick, or they're less likely to get medical treatment when they do become ill. That has an impact on poverty, because if you're ill, not only does medical treatment have a price in money, but it also means you're not working. Maybe you're not producing or supporting your family. We also know that the quality of education and the quantity of education is affected by gender. Your dean pointed out in her opening remarks, women are less likely to get higher degrees than men are, particularly in certain subjects. And this is a global phenomenon. This is true in the UK. There are certain subject areas where you will find fewer women professors, fewer women master's degree holders. That reduces your prospect. It reduces your ability, women's ability to have a career. The difference between getting a primary education and a secondary education can be things like making decisions, having enough information and knowledge to know that maybe the doctor is telling you something wrong, to be able to find the information you need to make the right decisions for yourself. So it's not just about employment, but it's about being able to think critically and ask questions. And we know there's also links between poverty and risk in labor market. So when we think about poverty and we think about the SDG, remember the multiple layers. Now, I spend a lot of time thinking about agriculture, and all of us who eat need to think about agriculture. Women produce more than 50% of the world's food, and they're usually globally they're about 43% of the world's labor market. In some continents, Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa, women are 80% of the labor force in agriculture. And yet they do not receive the same benefits and they don't have the same control over the products. Women's roles are largely in producing, not in adding value. So they're not getting the same benefit. And a lot of the labor is family labor. So they're not paid for the work. Yet women will invest 10 times more of their income to the benefit of the family. So things like food and nutrition and education for the family. So we know if you empower women, this has a positive effect on agricultural productivity, on economic development, and on social development. It helps the family when you have children seeing an empowered mother engaging in trade, working in the marketplace, making decisions, and being respected. And we also, one of the global challenges every country in the world needs to face is that we have a decreasing number of people who are staying in rural areas. This becomes a really big difficulty because we need people to stay in agriculture. Otherwise, we're not going to eat. We need the agricultural sector to be strong. In the UK, there's a campaign to support British farming, and they say if you ate today, thank a farmer. But right now, young people are leaving rural areas. So there's an increasing labor crisis. If we don't have enough women being recognized and supported in agriculture, we're going to have larger food security problems. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So if we look at the big picture, gender inequality has a set of issues. One is around food security. Women and men have different access to enough nutritious food. There's issues around property and land rights. So some places women control the land, some places men control the land. But the dynamics of that are influenced by inequality. If a woman can't own a piece of land because they are a woman, that's a consequence of inequality. But if a woman can't invest in land because she's female, that's also a result of inequality. Women often don't have access to services they need. So information services, credit, extension advice. They often have less ability to use new technologies. Even smartphones. One of my PhDs was looking at women's use of smartphones in southern India. And a lot of women didn't use them. One, because they couldn't afford them, because the smartphones were too expensive, but also because they were afraid to be seen in public with a phone. Because their neighbors would ask, why do you need a phone? and they would question. They said, "Are you cheating on your husband? What kind of things are you up to?" So it's also social suspicion of a woman with a piece of technology. And that made it much more difficult for women both to use the technology, but also gain the benefits of technology. We have women and men have different experiences of environmental adaptation. Can they respond to climate change as well? There are cultural norms about gender roles. What men and women are supposed to do is determined by your culture. It's not fixed in stone. And there's ways that men and women can interact with each other equitably that are appropriate for cultural norms, but don't ingrain inequality. And there's always room for negotiation. So we need to think about what are the things that are positive in our different cultures and that support equity, and what are the things that are undermining equity and that we can work on. Every culture has something. I could give you a very long list of things in the UK. There's also things like access to resources and household bargaining. How much power do men and women have in the household to make decisions? So that's our snapshot of gender and gender issues broadly in development. One thing they all have in common is that they're wicked problems. There is no one solution. And they're not very well defined. They're fuzzy. There isn't one way that's going to fix them, and the solutions are often not going to be technical. They're going to take multiple disciplines and multiple perspectives. They're usually difficult. They're never cheap, and they take a long time. So it's not to say we don't do anything, but it is to say these are complicated things that are very messy. So if we want to create societies that are fair and equitable, it takes time and it takes commitment. But we can't expect it to be fixed overnight. So if someone says, "I've got the solution to world poverty," I wouldn't believe them. But there's things we can do. So communication plays a role in here. Why is communication important? What does it have to offer? Communication drives change. It can support innovation and stimulate. New ideas can help people think differently. Sometimes we're missing information. We might say, okay, here's the problem that I'm trying to deal with. Communication can give us the tools to start solving those problems by circulating information. This could be technical information, it could be a new idea, it could be a new case. But communication is how that information and knowledge passes between different people and different groups of people. And what we need, especially in agricultural areas, people need access to good, reliable, and timely information. It needs to be, there's a lot of false information. If we go on Facebook, half the stories there are clickbait, right? So we need to be able to understand, how do you get accurate information that is right for your context? And farmers need that, and people need that in order to make credible change. And it has to be at the right time. You need information now, not in 5 years, if you're trying to plant a crop now. We also need better processes that let people have dialogue with policymakers. That can be something like, how do you talk to your village headman? How do you have a conversation with a local village leader, or your community leader, or your mayor? There needs to be a clear process of communication. There need to be structures that allow you to give information back to leaders, be that political leaders, be that community leaders. That could be private sector, it could be formal, informal, but we need it to be clear and transparent. Communication can help us to do that, because very few things are clear and transparent. And that's the crux of the problem. And it also has a financial consequence. So searching for information can cost a lot of money. So 10% of a rural business can be, it can cost up to 10% of a rural business's expenses to search for information. So the quicker you have easily accessible information, the cheaper that becomes for the business and the less they have to spend. We also know that information can increase the amount of income people make. So in Bolivia, access to market information through their telephone allowed farmers to increase their income by 10%. And that can be simply by finding out what's the price of tomatoes in this market next to me and the market down the road. And that's important because farmers can be taken advantage of. If you don't know what the supermarket price is for tomatoes, you might sell to the middleman for half of their value and you lose a lot of income. But if you know what the market price is, you can bargain more effectively, right? So it's important to have that information. But many women lack information. Many women don't have access to the information and the media that they need in order to benefit from knowledge. So this is fundamental in improving. So this is something communication can assist with and is fundamental to improving people's livelihoods. So communication stimulates innovation. If you want to continue to develop a business, if you want to support change in rural areas, we need to innovate. We need to do things differently. And farmers are fundamentally innovative. They try new things. But in order to do that well, they need the right information. And communication and information can help stimulate change. There's a wonderful example of a farmer in the Philippines. This is one of our former PhDs. The farmer had a pig farm, and he was very unpopular with his neighbors because pigs smell horrible. And so he had a very stinky, smelly farm, and his neighbors were getting mad, and they were threatening to shut his farm down. And he was really upset, and he was going to lose his livelihood. But he was listening to the radio one day, and they were interviewing a farmer who started a biogas production on his pig farm in another part of the Philippines. So he took the pig manure and was able to set up a biogas system that produced usable gas for them to use in their homes and in cooking. So this farmer flew across the Philippines and learned how to make his own biogas system. He then paid for that farmer to come and visit him, and they set up a biogas production. He then was able to provide cheap gas to his neighbors who stopped complaining because the smell was gone and they had cheap fuel. And he was able to expand his business and started selling biogas. This was because he was listening to the radio. And that was an informal case, but you also can see wonderful examples of radio programs where people are intentionally giving information about different case studies that will give you skills and opportunities to expand and to change your production. And the same thing with television. In East Africa, there's a TV show called Shamba Shape Up. It's a makeover show. A shamba is a farm. And so what they do is reality television, where a host and a team go and visit different farms, and they talk to the farmer about what projects they're working on, what problems they have. And they come back to the farm and they help to solve the problem. So in one case, they can't get enough fuel for their stove. So they find another way to produce fuel. Other viewers can then see the example of what's going on their farm and try it out themselves. A study that was done to see what the impact of this was showed that this was improving incomes for the viewers of this television show because they were learning from reality TV. And this is how new ideas can spread. It can be formal communication like a TV show, or it can be visiting another part of a country or another part of the world to learn new ideas. But communication is also gendered. Women and men have different access to information and different opportunities to access information and to use it and to make changes. So we need to remember how women and men use information. They look for different kinds, and different media is more easily available to some of them. It might be easier for a man to read a newspaper, for instance, if there are higher literacy rates amongst men. It might be more convenient for a woman to listen to the radio if she can play it in the background while she's making breakfast for her family. But that might be less convenient for a man who is driving. Well, maybe you do want actually a radio show while you're driving in Jakarta. It can kill the time. But you need to think about who's doing what when they're using a technology. It's and a lot of times we don't think about that. And by we, I mean people who are designing communication activities forget that men and women live their lives in very specific ways. So find out first. New technologies and processes tend to benefit men more than women, because often they're designed to make less work for men, but it doesn't make less work for women. A new tractor might be really helpful for men, but maybe not women if they can't afford to buy the tractor, or if they don't know how to drive, or if they're not supposed to drive. Technology is not neutral. It always is more easily used by some people. The same is true by age. If you have a smartphone with tiny buttons and you have bad eyesight, that is a problem. And this can be more and more of an issue as people age. My eyesight is way worse now than 10 years ago. So tiny buttons mean I can't use the phone. My father, the same thing. He's got big fingers and terrible eyesight. So we have to think about those things when we think about technology. Where are masks for cell phone transmission? Who has access to the satellite waves, to the radio broadcast? And this is global. In the Isle of Wight, it is very difficult to use your mobile phone because there's no service. So rural areas tend to have poorer infrastructure than urban areas. So it's easier for people in urban areas to get access to technology than in rural. So often new technologies don't make it into women's hands. And if we increase the amount of information that men can receive and decrease how much women can receive, we're going to make gender inequality worse, not better. We also know that different men and women make different decisions. They have different interests. So if we want to support innovation, we need to take that into account. We need to understand how do women make decisions and how do men make decisions, and how can we find technologies and ideas that will support them each in their different decision-making processes. And we need to use the right communication tools for men and for women. That makes sense? Yeah, okay. So what this means for communication, and if we want to address inequality, we need communication that is led by farmers and led by communities. So if you're not talking about agriculture, if you're talking about changes in healthcare and education, it still needs to be led by communities. Keeping in mind that there's a lot of different people who are stakeholders. They all have different perspectives. Some of them are going to conflict with one another. So you're not going to get agreement easily. But it's important to make sure that all of the voices are heard. Women's voices are often quieted. Young people, and I'm sure you experience this, young people are often not taken seriously enough when it comes to your voice being heard in decision making. People who are older are often not heard in decision making processes. So we need to make sure that all of the different actors are heard, even if they disagree. We all have different understandings of what change should look like, and those all need to be at least acknowledged. And then there needs to be negotiation. Face-to-face and interpersonal engagement is still the most effective and important way of communicating. Smartphones are great and tablets are wonderful and an app is fantastic, but they all have limitations. And you can't ask questions from an app. When we look at how AI, artificial intelligence, is being used, it's very generic. It doesn't let us understand the depth of people's experiences. And I know some people are working on whether AI is going to increase inequality, because it could very well do. We need to understand that institutions need to be able to have the capacity to support change. So institutions can be things like community organizations, it can be extension systems, it can be ministries, it can be rural development agencies. They need to know enough and have the capacity to listen to people, to be good communicators, and to help support unheard voices. We need to understand that people in rural communities, particularly farmers, are already innovative and changing. They're not stupid. And there's often an assumption that if you live in a rural area, you're not very smart. The opposite is true. That's a stereotype, and a very false one. People are making decisions and trying to improve their business and trying to improve their livelihood all the time. But farmers have different issues and constraints, and communication is important in understanding what they are and in listening to farmers and helping them drive different interventions. That makes sense so far? Okay, I think I believe you. Is it okay to keep going? Okay. So one of the things that I work on to try to understand how do we take these ideas and put them into practice is through some of the work I've been doing with the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, the FAO. The FAO has been working on communication for development for decades. They started this in the 1970s, and oh, thank you. And we understand that communication is fundamental in supporting participation and empowering people to make decisions and to create change. So how do we do that? How can communication we know that it can help to mobilize communities, and we know that there's a lot of ways that you can create the right content accessible by farmers, accessible by rural communities to meet their needs, both their information needs, but then also to support them in getting new ideas. So how do you make that happen? And one of the ways that the FAO we've been working on is something called Rural Communication Services. So Rural Communication Services is a whole lot of different types of ways of using communication to provide services to rural areas. This can be through different media, so radio, television, photography. It is through training and capacity building. It's through improving local institutions so that they know how to better communicate and to support farmers. It's about creating participatory processes so that farmers and communities can have a voice in how they want what they want their community to look like. So Rural Communication Services is an approach to helping to create the infrastructure that lets that happen. Practically speaking, I'm just pressing the wrong button. There. So why is it important? sustainable development, as I said at the beginning, these are wicked problems. There's no clean and neat solution. So we need to be able to address a lot of different complicated problems at the same time in order to be effective. Communication is important in this because in order to address complicated problems, communities need to be able to critically analyze their own challenges. They need to be able to say what works and what doesn't. They need to be able to make decisions themselves, not be told what to do. That doesn't work. So communication can help build the critical skill thinking and also the skills so that people know what changes they want to make, they have the skills to make it, and the infrastructure to support them. And the infrastructure can be, is there a training program? Are there enough schools? Does the Ministry of Finance have small loans? They need those elements. Rural Communication Services brings those together and tries to embed them within the institutions that are supposed to provide services. So government structures, non-governmental, working in partnership with private sector and public sector. So this is done through this framework, the Rural Communication Services Framework. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you. If you would like to read in more depth, the publications that I put the pages, the photos of, have a large description, and they're available to download from the FAO website in 3 languages. So you can pick your language. But the goal of Rural Communication Services is to help people have the capacity to make informed decisions and undertake collective action. So communication does this, and I want to highlight in a gender equitable way. And we need to take equity and gender into account when addressing any communication initiative. It's done through participatory communication, where local communities can drive the communication process and drive the change that they would like to see take place. So that the end result is that they own the changes they want, they have the capacity to do it, and they're not reliant on external bodies to help them. They can then go to the local headman and say, this is what we need. And they have analyzed their situation, and they can make a plan so they can then get what they want and they need. There have been trends in how this has changed over time. So we know in rural areas, a lot of communication, at first, a lot of governments were controlling information. So services, the government or the Ministry of Agriculture would go to a community and say, I want you to grow this crop using this method, and here's the information to do it. A lot of information was top down. And this is globally. This isn't just in Indonesia. This is most countries in the world. It was a top-down approach has been very heavily promoted by the World Bank and large international actors. And that's part of the reason why many countries had a top-down information systems. But what's begun to happen is that there's been a shift to community-driven change, where communities make decisions. So for instance, in Indonesia, there's a village development program where communities are able to make decisions about how their community funds are spent, and they can design their own project. So nobody's telling them what to do. So that's become more of a trend, which is great. We want more community decision-making because it tends to be more appropriate choices and more appropriate programs. We know that there has also been an expansion of infrastructure. It's far easier to get a mobile phone and mobile service now than 10 years ago. I remember when it took me 45 minutes to spell check a Word document because my computer was too slow, and that was a fast computer. Now, the stupid thing's done before I can go make a cup of tea. how often was it? I used to have 3 phone numbers when I was living in Uganda. I had to have 3 phone numbers and 3 phones because I could never be guaranteed I'd have mobile signal on any one of them. But now there are more mobile phone users in the world than landline. How many of, could you put your hand in the air if you have a landline? Can you put your hand in the air if you have a mobile phone? Well, I know there's more than just like the 5 of you, but very few people have a landline anymore. It's all mobile phones, right? That's a huge change in technology and even the speed of internet. And what that means is there's more options for how you can use media and communication. You can get real-time information about a volcano erupting here and the impact in Sumatra. You can find out, I found out about I was in Malaysia when the earthquake happened in Myanmar, and I found out from my friends in Thailand about the effect within 5 minutes of the earthquake happening. You can get instant information. This has had a huge impact on things like natural disasters. I think it was probably 10, 15 years ago, there was a massive tsunami in India. And I mean, thousands of people died. However, one of the radio stations had a service where you could text information to the radio station. They could then broadcast this to communities. People texted where the water levels were, what was happening, where was safe and where was dangerous. This saved thousands of lives because the radio station broadcast that information across southern India. And now you can do that more easily. Even you can put messages on Facebook, you can be your own broadcaster, but it is possible for local stations to harness more and more technology. We do have more digitalization, so more digital services are available, which is both positive and negative. Some people can't access digital services. So if it's all online and all digital, people will be excluded. But you can go shopping now if you want to buy something from a small business in Aceh, you can go and do that on Shopee, right? That has changed commerce. If you want to strengthen the Indonesian economy, buying things from other Indonesian businesses is a great way to do that. And now it's easier. There is technology that is helping to enable that. We also have increased urbanization, and that changes how communication technologies and structures are used. In Asia, there was a report, we did some research on rural communication in different regions of the world. And in Asia, some of the things that are important for us to remember are that we need to look at people's use of media and ICTs to see how they're actually being used. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of groups are trying to create apps and use ICTs for information provision, but that's not how farmers and people are using the information. You have to follow what people do, not try to force them to do what you want them to do. Because you're going to waste your time and a lot of money. There needs to be greater digital literacy. So some people don't know how to use smartphones or tablets or some of the digital tools that are important, not because they're foolish, not because they're stupid, but because they've never encountered it before. If you live in a rural area, when will you have used a mobile phone? If you have literacy problems or if you can't read or write, how are you going to be able to operate it? So there needs to be greater digital literacy. And it also, and this is so it's particularly for women, and you need to be literate around things like scams. The Philippines is the #1 place for sharing misinformation because there's low levels of digital literacy. People can't necessarily tell that the post they're sharing has a virus or is a scam or is trying to get your money from your grandmother. There's a lot of fake stuff out there, and without good digital literacy, we can fall for it. So we need to improve people's ability to discern what's real and what's not. How do you figure out what's fake and what's real? We do need, and the research found out you needed more frameworks and policies and stronger communication strategies in Asia. There's a lot being done, but not in a coordinated way. In the future, there has been huge and very quick adoption of ICTs. People are using them and transforming them within Southeast Asia. And so there's a lot of potential. If people have more skills and have greater digital literacy, they're going to be able to take technologies and transform them so they're more usable. So increasing that also, there's evidence to say that there's greater skill. We need more services, and particularly advisory services for farmers, and increased practices around marketing. There's a lot of groups who will have a really good business idea, but no idea how to market it, and a weak chain to get the product to the market. I visited a community in Padang this week, and they decided they wanted to have beekeeping. And it's a great idea. People like honey. It's easy to sell. The problem was this community is in the base of a mountain range with a really bad road and no public transport. And nobody in the community owns a car. So to get the honey out of the community is very difficult and very expensive. The other problem is that nobody had taught them how to raise bees. They didn't have access to the information they needed to raise bees, so they didn't have flowers that the bees wanted to eat. So the bees all flew away. If somebody had come and given them training on what kind of flowers are popular, they could have had the business because they had the space, everything else, but they needed training in how to do it, and they needed better market linkages. So we need to think about across this, we need services to enhance farmer skills in order to have those businesses and improve marketing, because especially young people want to be entrepreneurs. They are more willing to take risks and have good ideas and new ideas. If you want development and you want communities to develop, you need someone to have an idea and take a risk. So we need better services and structures to help young people do that. And this is particularly the case with younger generations. So the main things that are important for making this work are awareness raising and information. We need the right information at the right time. We need people to be empowered. We need to remember gender equity. We need to remember who has access to information and improving their ability to get information. We need advocacy, so you need to have policymakers at all levels understand policy that helps to support change rather than hinder it. And you need to have inclusive partnerships and mobilization. People need to be able to work with one another in an inclusive way in order to get more done. Because it's the problems when they're big and messy, no individual group or person is going to be able to achieve it by themselves, but collectively it's more possible. It's not easy. There remain problems with infrastructure. So is there enough bandwidth? Are there enough mobile phone towers? Gender equity and inequalities still hinder the ability to use information. Different people's ability to participate, listening to farmers, listening to people from minority groups, listening to people from different parts of the countries. We need to be critical with using digital tools. Using apps and digital tools is very sexy, but it might not be appropriate if people don't know how to use them. We can never remove the human element from communication. It's always going to be, how do we help people talk to each other? We can't replace them with an artificial intelligence service or voice to text. Humans are fundamentally always going to be part of communication, and they need to be at the heart of it. So we need to let technology support humans, not technology drive communication. And there is a real tendency to do that. Certainly a lot of policy is aiming towards digital, where it needs to be focusing more on human. It needs to be affordable, so not too expensive. And we need to look at how to develop evidence. We need to be able to show how change is taking place and why. So we need to keep working. This is where people like our colleagues who are researchers are incredibly important. Research is fundamental to understanding what's going on in society and why are changes taking place. So there is always going to be a space and a very strong need for good evidence and good critical questions. Thank you.
You want to sit or yes? Thank you very much, Dr. Sarah Cardey, for the insightful and inspiring presentation. And we truly appreciate the valuable knowledge that you have shared with us. And now I think that but let me highlight some points from the Sarah presentation, and I'm interested in what in your story at the first about your car accident story. Yeah, I remember that my parents always teach us like this. So it is okay for men, for male, for boys to cry because of their sad or suffering thing. Because our society, including my parents, always teach us that it is not a lot for boys to cry. You have to be strong. So I think that now it is a big problem for us. Yes, and from Sarah's presentation, we could highlight some points that technology has changed how people communicate. However, there are still inequality in using the technology. And the second is sustainable development involves complex and long-term processes. So it requires innovation, services, and infrastructure. And the third is dynamic communication is essential to achieve sustainable developing goals. And then I think diverse range of actors must be engaged for gender equality activities and encouragement. And the last is men and women should have equal opportunities and access to education, technology, and other activities. So now we open the floor for question and answer session. Is it okay? Yes. And if you have questions, kindly raise your hands and then introduce yourself before asking questions. Yes, we have, oh, there are a lot of people want to ask Sarah. Maybe someone help me to bring the microphone. Yeah, I think the girl in blue, yes, you. You come first. Please, you come in front of the stage. Yeah, and then introduce yourself. Sarah, the participants are students of undergraduate of Department of Communication and also the lecturers. Yeah. Please help me to give the microphone for her. Yes. Just test. Yeah. Yes. You may. Yeah. Di situ nggak apa-apa. There is no sound. Okay, I will take the microphone from here.
Tick. All right. Hello, Dr. Sarah. I am Wiyanda Putri Hairunisa, or everybody in here call me Chacha.
Chacha.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
I'm in 8th semester this year's, and in Indonesia we still have a culture from like Middle Eastern because our religions, and as a Gen Z, we use a lot of mobile phone and media socials, and there's a trending that's saying about woman right now is a providers, and women right now have a toxic masculinity that we cannot ask for help. I was born in a family that my mother is a provider, my mother is a worker, and my father is a stay-at-home dad. And it's bring me, maybe it's just like a childhood trauma, and it makes me, I cannot ask for help. I cannot share my story if I'm sad, if I'm disappointed and I'm upset or I'm happy. I cannot let it go. And right now, I'm in my 8th semester, and there's a lot going on in my life. I don't know what to do. I have to make a really tough decision of my life. And I have a dream, of course. As a woman, I have a dream. I want to open my own school dance in the end of this year. But I still have, I'm still scared of what people think. And right now, I'm internships in one of national TV station. And there's a lot of men. I am the only woman there. I'm the only woman, and my work is the same as a man, but they not really appreciate me that good. So how I'm facing my fear to take the risk to open my own school and don't think about other opinions. And I'm afraid, I'm still afraid that, man, I don't know, I'm not really believing in man right now. Because we are women in here, I think woman has to do all the work. We still use, and it's in fact, in Indonesia still have to, or double gender in our household. Double gender, like we still doing all the work in house, and we have to go out and working. We have to take care of the children with our husband, anything like that. And how we face that, how we communicate, because all the women here it's just like we just mumbling in our heart and never let it go. How we, a woman, how say it louder and louder, and men or other people still respect that. That's my question. Thanks very much.
Yeah. Maybe you could answer question by question. Says.
That's a big question. But women often have what we call it a double burden. You've got both the burden of expectations. Most places expect women to take care of the household and take care of children. So we call that our reproductive roles. But then women are also often expected to produce and to work. So you've got a double burden, because men do not culturally have the same expectation that they should be involved in taking care of children in the same way. That doesn't mean that men don't, and it doesn't mean that they can't. It's that that's what we're taught that men and women should do. So that's pretty common. And I think one of the things that can actually be very powerful is when we share our experiences with one another. So if women talk to each other about what they're experiencing, the chances are you're not alone. Same thing with men. They're not alone. My father has been meeting with a group of 10 men for 40 years. They're a men's group. And they formed because they were all had kids about the same age. And one of the people at work said, you guys would get along. And 40 years later, they're very close friends and they've helped each other through huge things, marriages and divorces and kids and death. And it's been a really important support. For women, the feminist movement in North America started by women getting together and talking about their lives. So actually talking and being able to support each other is really important, and it helps to get over the fear of doing something that nobody expects you to do. I mean, it is women, especially in like professional environments, do face challenges. I regularly have people speak to me like I'm an idiot because they say, oh, she's a woman. She couldn't possibly know. I had somebody explain one of my own theories to me. And I'm like, no, I wrote that. I know what that's about. So it's not uncommon. And that is something women will face. But I've learned how to laugh at it when silly things happen and to support other women in helping to be, you have to be a bit thick-skinned, but then also ask for help. It can be very difficult to ask for help, but asking for help isn't weak. It's actually stronger to recognize what you can do by yourself and what you can't. So asking for advice and for help is saying, okay, I know my limits and I know what I need to thrive. So there is power in working together. So I think that's what I would suggest. Think about, get support from good people and be honest and open and keep reflecting, because it sounds like you've got a lot to think about and you've got some good reflections already that you've started.
Yeah, thank you, Chacha, for your questions. And you don't have to be worrying about what you are doing now, okay? Yeah, you are a great woman. And the next question, yes, for the male students. Who first raise your hands? Yeah, you. Yeah, student in batik, purple batik. Introduce yourself and then ask your question shortly. Okay.
Excuse me, Dr. Sarah. My name is Muhammad Brian Saputra. I'm in semester 2. I want to ask you about gender today. So I want to ask about gender. In Indonesia, there are a lot of discrimination about women rights because I've been in Australian. I've been studied there in Wortel Park Primary School, and it's different from there and here because I see in Indonesia like there's a lot of news about a married woman and man that got divorced like a normal person or like an artist. It's so many. And how I want to ask you, so how do you empower women and stand for their rights? That's all for today.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Okay. Since the first year students.
Yeah.
He is the first year students, yeah.
It's an excellent question. Change takes time. So we need, if we want to empower, there's multiple levels. On the one hand, sometimes we've got laws that make it difficult for men and women to be equal. So we need to reflect on the social structure, the structures we've got. If we want to empower women and to create better equity, we have to empower women and we have to empower men. We need women. It's like if somebody is experiencing domestic violence, we need the woman to understand, for instance, that she does not deserve to be beaten. But we also need to convince the man to stop beating her. So we need to understand, we need women need self-confidence. And if women have been told, no, you can't do this and you can't do that, if you're being undermined and your self-esteem is being told there are many things women can't do because they're women, it takes time to get the confidence. You have to be empowered within yourself, but you also need to be empowered with other people, and society needs to be empowered to recognize the value that women have to contribute and that they do have human rights. At the same time, men need to recognize they need to be empowered healthily within themselves. A lot of men are told you have to be very macho. You have to earn a lot of money. You have to drive a fast car. There's behaviors that men are told I'm supposed to do if I'm going to be a real man. Nobody lives up to that. And it's actually quite dangerous for men to try because they might have mental health problems. They might get killed driving too fast on a motorcycle because that's what they think they're supposed to do. So we need men to be able to be empowered to be genuinely who they are, and they need to understand the role and be empowered to not be afraid of women having a voice. I think there's a lot of fear of losing social power. And so as societies, we need to understand that there is more power together. It doesn't mean dominance and one dominating over the other. It means partnership. And there's a lot of stereotypes that go along with women being empowered. People get scared, women are going to take over and start killing all the men, and they're not going to want to get married. None of that is true. So we need to think, really, that's why I say, think about what this means in your life, because stereotypes and misinformation and myths are what hurts changing equality. So we start with individuals, and then we start working collectively, and it needs to happen on multiple levels. You need advocates and people who are very public, and you need people in private who are also showing, a mother and a father showing their child what equitable partnership and healthy communication in a family is. So it needs to happen at all different levels.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah, for your response. And so empowerment should be given for both women and men, because women and men can work together and collectively. So maybe next question, I ask lecturer maybe. Yeah, Pak Akbar, and then Pak Rusnoto. Okay. After this, I give opportunities for students again. So please, Pak Akbar, where is the microphone?
Thank you, Sarah, for your lovely presentation today. And I can some kind of creating keywords from your presentation. If I would like to make it into keywords, it's gonna be communication, agricultural, and communication, gender. And having said that, before my question, I'd like to inform it will interest you a lot. It's about that our former Minister of Foreign, which is a woman from Indonesia, Ibu Retno Marsudi, has been chosen by the UN Secretary General to some kind of a leader in SDGs number 6 about water. So in terms of speaking about global water, there will be in communication of a woman from Indonesia. It is Ibu Retno Marsudi. So yeah, and here goes my question. It's just a simple question. I hope it can give inspiration for the others. So, what are the main challenges faced by women farmers in accessing water resources, and how do these challenges affect agricultural sustainability? I think that will be all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And that's brilliant news. I think it'll be really good to have a nice, strong Indonesian voice in the United Nations with water. Indonesia probably has a better understanding of the issues around water than many countries do, given the nature of the country. That's awesome. What are the challenges for women and access to water and also irrigation? So, water systems, women often don't have enough access to enough resources like money to be able to design infrastructure on their farms. So if a farm needs to have an irrigation system, women often don't have the resources to be able to install that system. So if you, and I mean, this depends on the kind of farming you're doing, like rice terraces, they're going to have, you have to be able to add the water and remove water according to what kind of farming you're doing. Usually that's not going to be through rain. So you need to have some kind of system. Women often don't have enough money and access to funds in order to put irrigation systems in place. That's one of the challenges. Another is access to the water. So you could, sometimes it's possible to dig wells, but then you also need to be able, but maybe that's not. Capturing rainwater might be possible, access to a stream. You need access to the infrastructure. So there's two challenges. One is whether women are able to make decisions about who gets access to the water. So I've seen situations where a woman has installed an irrigation system, but she's like the 5th farm down, and the first 3 farms take all the water. And the woman's 2 farms down the pipe, and she can't do anything about it. So it's access to water in that sense. If you don't have access to irrigation, you're going to have a lot of problems with production because, many farmers don't have irrigation systems and have to use rain. We know the rains are like this rainy season is stretching longer now. It should have stopped a couple weeks ago in Indonesia. So when you have changes in rain systems, it's harder for you to make decisions about what to do about your crops. So you need better information about what to plant when to cultivate it, and it's riskier. And women are less able to take the risk if they don't have money or if they're more reliant on the farm income. So it's that combination. So infrastructure, the information that they need, even access to weather information is really difficult. Most farmers have difficulties getting good, accurate weather information. And for women, it's a bit more difficult because then they also need to know how to interpret it. So that's part of the challenge. One of the things that does help is things like water user groups. If groups of women come together, then they are able to collectively create systems where they can all gather water. There's some really good examples of how women have been able to get more control over the inputs collectively. That makes sense? Asri, did I make any mistakes? Is that okay? Asri has more of a specialty in the technical agriculture, so I checked to make sure that she says I'm okay.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. And next question, Pak Rusnoto? Or, yeah. Here's my colleague from Neighbor University, next here.
Hello, Dr. Sarah. Nice to know you. I am Rustono Faradi Marta. You can call me Frat. I came from Universitas Satya Negara Indonesia. near with this place. Just 8 minutes from here, but this is my first time come here. Maybe we can do a lot collaboration ahead, and you can visit our university. It's very interesting based on your background that Ms. Farida said about your experience goes to several countries in Asia. How can the media, how can media and technology be leveraged, to amplify the gender voices, the gender diverse voices in development process? If you know about the media itself in different countries, such as the Philippines, Thailand, and Indonesia itself, or your country from UK, maybe have different strategies. And the second, what does the role of local culture to crafting the gender sensitive communication in the development process? Thank you so much.
Thank you. There is an excellent question, because actually I do think the media can play a really strong role in showing us different perspectives on gender. Some of the things, so there's different, I know we're not telling newspapers and journalists what to do, because the journalists need to have freedom to find their own stories. But what I have found has been incredibly effective in a lot of countries, telling stories that are showing different examples and role models of men and women, so that you can show why gender inequality causes problems for men and women, but then how can you do something about it? So often we don't see enough role models, for instance, of gender equitable men. But we know that people learn from role models. So newspapers and magazines and radio and television, if they tell the stories and show young men examples, or other older men, not just the young ones, show examples of what does gender equitable male look like. How can you be a better man and be equitable? Same thing for women, showing them stories of how women can be business owners, telling the story of a former Minister of Foreign Affairs being part of the United Nations. What's her story? Because when we see what other people's careers and trajectories have been, those stories can be very inspiring, and it can be very simple. Telling stories of women who are running small businesses in communities, in a village, all the way to CEOs, that's very powerful. So that's like the news media. The entertainment media also has a role. There's been some really interesting and profound stuff done using soap operas. We call it entertainment education. So there's, for instance, one of the soap operas in South Africa is trying to do awareness about HIV and AIDS. So they use soap opera to tell the story of what happens when you're HIV positive, what are the things that you can do to stay on your medication. So they have social messages that's part of an entertaining story. And that has really, and in Latin America, there's a series in Nicaragua that is talking about complicated social issues. So the actors are acting out stories that are from people's lives. So the writers are writing cases based on what happens in their lives, real stories from their communities. So people are learning from watching the characters and being able to say, okay, I don't think I should make that decision, but that's a good decision. So they recognize themselves in what they're seeing on the screen, and they're watching someone else make decisions, and they can see the consequences of good decisions and bad decisions. So media and entertainment can create spaces for people to learn from others, be fictional or real. And I think those are really, really important. The second part of your question, Did I? I don't think I answered it though. Local culture. Well, and it's interesting because some of the ways of local expressions and understandings of culture. Last night I went to the art fair in Jakarta, the art park. And one of the things that was fascinating is you had a whole lot of younger artists being part of it, and they were showcasing this is what's on the mind of young artists. So you can use local cultural expression, use painting, use dance to talk about and to explore questions that people have. Celebrate local expressions of culture. Culture is never fixed. Often, it changes over time. And so some arguments have been made, well, women should keep doing what they do because that's the culture and that's the practice. All practices have changed over time. If we went back 400 years, we'd all have different ways of living. What we need to do is reflect on what's very positive about our culture. There's many. Look at what are the things to celebrate, but also look at how can we live with the values that are important. If community and family and fairness are values, how can we talk about that and what that looks like here? Because gender equity in Indonesia has to look Indonesian. It shouldn't be trying to become the UK. The UK is the UK. It should be, well, how do we reflect and what does this discussion look like here? Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. What do you think, Pak Rusnata? Is enough? Yeah. Maybe my Mustika, do you want to ask question for Sarah? Yeah, my Mustika is a senior lecturer and she is teaching gender communication now.
Thank you, Mbak Farida. Good day, Ms. Sarah. Here in Indonesia, we have new government and we have in Mr. Prabowo cabinet, there are 7 coordinator ministry and 41 minister, 55 vice minister, but I think it's only little there are women minister. What do you think about this? Even though I believe that gender perspective doesn't depend on the number, male or female. But what about this? What do you think? Thank you.
Thank you. I think you're right. Gender perspective isn't necessarily about women or men. Women can have a terrible sense of equality. They're just as capable, and sometimes so inequality is upheld by women and men. So the number of women, the UK government is not great on the number of women representatives either, I have to say. There's a lot of room for improvement. I think rather than counting yes, we want a larger number of women, but that's not enough. You could have 50% of the government ministers be women and still not have a gender perspective. One of the things I've been thinking a lot about is how do you support women to become leaders? So maybe being a government minister isn't what the best way a woman could lead. You can't force the government to appoint women just because they're women. But we can support women's leadership and having social voices, because sometimes they can be just as important or more important than formal positions. Because I've seen other countries, like Nigeria has women members of parliament. They have specific reservations. So they have to have 50% have to be women. Well, those women ministers don't have as much power as the men ministers. So it doesn't do any good. So I think what is more important is having strong voices working in government, strong voices of leadership, rather than necessarily having more ministers, though the aim should be have more. Why do we not have, for instance, in the UK, enough women professors in the sciences? Because we haven't supported them as they develop their career. So that similarly, if we don't have enough women leaders, if we support women's leadership development early and help them to get into a position, then they can have a constructive role. So I think you're right. Counting the women isn't change. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. And is it okay if I ask one more question for the last questions? Yes. Yes. Now I give. Yeah. Yes. Please, Mbak. Yes. Ya, itu mic-nya di belakang. Yeah. Introduce yourself before asking your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Sarah, for the explanation. My name is Ariesta. In this simple question, what is the target to be done in SDGs number 5 in 2030, and how can communication be effective if there is a culture and do not want to explore the modernization? Thank you.
Thank you, Ariesta, for your questions.
That's an excellent and a difficult question. I think the goal for SDG 5, some of it is to recognize that there is inequality. So what can we do? Basic things like improve education levels, improve literacy levels, make sure that women have access to health services. So all of those things that we forget are different between men and women, there should be basic, women should have access to nutrition, should have access to the kinds of services that men do. So that's sort of the very bare minimum. And I think there's still so much work to be done on the SDGs. If women and men had the same access to healthcare, I would be over the moon. So that's where just making it that they have access and we can engage and women are more empowered, that we have better measures of equity and literacy. How can communication do that? Some of it is by communication means capacity building. So it can be teaching, it can be helping to empower people through it could be a community training programs, it can be using mass media, but building people's capacity, both in their own self-worth, building the skills that they need in order to be not afraid to go and speak to a doctor, to know how to cook nutritious food, to know how to grow plants. So have the right information that they need, the belief that they can do it, and then advocate for the opportunities and the resources that they need to be able to do something. So advocate for better agricultural services, advocate for better healthcare services for pregnant women, for instance. So skills and self-belief and advocacy so that you can get the services and resources that women need. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah, for your response. And I'm so sorry for other participants who cannot ask more questions because I think the time is running out today. And thank you very much for all our participants and also Sarah for this fruitful and insightful discussion. Thank you very much. And now I'm giving back to the MC Naswa and Siva. Thank you very much. Check.
Thank you, Dr. Farida, for the discussion session. We kindly invite the Dean to present a gift and souvenir to our honorable speaker. Ibu Telis and Dr. Sarah kindly requested to stand in front of the stage, token of appreciation presentation.
And now we will have a photo session. And now we will have a photo session. Please, the photographer prepare the session in the front of the stage. We invite Dr. Sarah, Vice Rector, Dean, Moderator, to join us, a photo group.
To all participants, please kindly return to your seat. Teman-teman boleh duduk dulu yuk.
Teman-teman yang udah absen boleh langsung balik ke kursinya lagi ya.
Teman-teman boleh minta waktunya sebentar, kita foto. Ya, teman-teman boleh diri dulu. Iya, boleh. Sebelah kiri boleh bangun dulu. Iya, kita foto bersama dari depan ya. Terima kasih yang udah bangun. Oke, yang di sayap kiri boleh bangun. Terima kasih.
Cik, 1, 2. Oke, dihitung ya. 1, 2, 2,5, 3. Kali lagi ya, UHAMKA unggul video ya. Ya. 1, 2, 3. UHAMKA. Thank you. Bye.
Tes. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope this session has been insightful and inspiring for all of us.
On behalf of this organizing committee, we thank you for your presence and participation.
Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Ya.